Hello, welcome to the Healing Collective.live. I have with me today LaShaon Machado Brinson. I am so glad to have her here on the podcast. Hello, LaShawn. How are
Hello.
you? How's it going? What's new with you?
Here and we just got these babies back into school, so that is like the fresh amazingness that's going on. Some peace and quiet.
Peace and quiet.
Yes.
Yes. We love our children. Me personally,
Yes.
I love kids. I do.
Me too.
I
Me
didn't have
too.
enough of them.
I have 5 people.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
wow.
Yep.
Profound self-love. You embody it.
Yes. I had to.
Let's talk about that. Where did you get this idea of profound self-love, and how does it play in your healing?
So, profound self-love to me, I'm always looking for foundational things. I think in, my way of, being a therapeutic coach, or whether it's writing a book, or even if I'm just talking, I am always giving a backstory, giving a foundation for things. And so for me, there were so many things that I needed to work on to heal. Having 5 kids and being in the profession that I was in, there were so many areas that I just kept discovering, like, oh God, we need to redo this. Okay, oh God, we need to fix this. We need to fix that. And so in trying to work on so many different things, I started to say, this is going to drive me crazy too. Like healing is about to drive me nuts,
Okay.
because it can be so messy and it can be so many areas of your life that you need to reparent, that you need to deal with. So in that search, I started to realize, like, wait a minute, if I can just get this part down pat, then at the root, if the root is good, then everything else is going to blossom and do what it needs to do, work out. And so instead of going after all the little things, I personally had to start to look at the core of, why are things this way? Why do you need healing in this area? If self-love was in place from the beginning, there would have been so many things that could have been avoided. So that for me is foundational in every area of life.
Now, you mentioned about the little things. So the little things, that's different than just the bubble baths and the affirmations, or are the
Absolutely.
little things the bubble baths and the affirmations?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I love that you say that. The bubble baths, the affirmations. Sometimes we'll think that self-love is splurging on ourselves. I'm taking myself out and I'm going,
Get my nails done.
yeah, I'm gonna get my nails done. I'm gonna get a massage, or
Right.
I'm going to purchase myself the most expensive, bag at the mall. That's wonderful. But when we talk about doing all of those things, we're still talking about working on the presentation of the public self, right? So I get my nails done. Why? Because I'm presenting myself to look a certain way. I'm getting my hair done. Why? Because when people look at me, I want them to know that I love myself, that I take good care of myself. Well, I work with a lot of women who look amazing. When I say amazing on the outside, the car, the house, just everything looks beautiful. The money is coming in, but there is an issue with the self-love portion when we start to look at the private self, so we can present ourselves good, but how much do you give time to listening to what your own heart has to say?
Wow. I already know this conversation is just going to get deeper. I want to come back to that, but if we can, let's talk about you. How did you get to this place where you understood that it wasn't just about the presentation, as you just said, but it was a lot more, it was deeper than that. How did you get to that place?
It took me a while because my life growing up was about the presentation. Growing up as a pastor's daughters, because both of my parents were considered pastors and apostles and all of the goodness in church. Growing up in that space, whether we like to admit it or not, is all about presentation.
Ask.
It's about the image. You have to look the part. Now, behind closed doors, nobody really wants to know about that. Nobody's really checking for that. It's when you get on that stage that the presentation has to be good. And so, in my own life, watching my parents' marriage, being, serving as their unofficial therapist from probably 8 or 9 years old,
Really?
you're literally being in the midst of their arguments and saying, Mom, don't say that to Dad. Dad, don't say, repeat after me, literally at 8 or 9
Wow.
years old. And I grew up in that space of seeing how they were presented to everyone and then how things really looked. And that
Mm.
was, it was normalized for so long for me. But then as I got older and got married myself, and, we had this grand entrance, everyone would be facing the podium when
Mhm.
you would come out. My parents' offices were in the back of the church. And
Okay.
so when you come out of those back offices, we would come out and there would be this huge entourage because my parents had their armor bearers. We had our armor bearers. Then me with children had the lady who takes care of my baby, the security, a, a huge entourage.
Oh,
It
wow.
was a display. And so when we would come out of that space, all eyes are on you. And I
Mhm.
remember Tony sitting in that space, getting ready to come out and having panic attacks
Wow.
because my parents had just argued. And now we're on our way out here to go and lead people into worship, or like it was just so confusing at times. And so I spent a lot of time begging my family, like, can we do therapy, can we do something for our health?
How old were you when you began to ask and say, "Hey, can we go see someone as
mm,
a family?"
I probably did not become vocal about
Mhm.
that until I was in my late 30s,
Okay. And
because
what
it
was the
had been,
response at this point?
no, who we gonna go see?
We gonna go see. Yes,
And
I've
it
heard
just
that.
seemed
Yes.
like I had, during that time when I started to ask for it, I had opportunity to meet people. And I met this man who literally started to train me. I had no training at the time, but
Mhm.
he just, became my friend, an older white gentleman,
Mhm.
became a good friend of mine and started training me in counseling and therapy. And we brought him in, and everyone was like, we'll do it for you to help you, but no one felt like they needed help.
Wow.
So that was the
So
response.
you talk about your vision glitching. Was this around the same time that you had a just from sheer exhaustion?
Yeah.
So was the okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Living the systems that were set before me, where, though in the household, my household was literally patterned after my parents' household.
You
You've
mean
got
your own personal
my
how
own
okay.
household. And
Okay.
at this time I had children. I probably had all five of my kids at that time. And I was sitting there doing my laundry because as a mom, I was expected in the patriarchal system that I was in to manage my home. Like the
Manage
Bible
your
even
house.
talks about those things. So here
Yes.
you need to manage your home, manage your children, teach and I was doing all of these things plus pastoring, plus being the therapeutic help for my parents. Like I was stretched so thin that I sat there and yeah, it kind of like, how the TV it'll just go, or your
The
computer is like,
glitching.
I'm done. And I saw that in my vision, and it scared me. It really scared me, and I
So
knew,
that was the
okay,
wake up.
a big wake up call for me, a big wake up call. I reached out for help. There was another pastor that I knew that was progressive as well.
Okay.
And she had gotten into life coaching and she was disdained for it because,
Yeah.
we here to preach the word of God. We ain't no life coaches. And so I reached out to her. And as I started speaking with her around the same time, I met the older gentleman, and it just seemed like doors opened for me to heal. And as I
Mm,
started speaking with her, the first assignment that she gave me, she said, I want you to take some time away for yourself. Have you ever just gone on a trip or a girls' trip and did anything a girls' trip? Never. It was
wow.
taboo in my church culture for me to go away without husband and kids. It was so hard,
Okay.
to fight through that because it was so strong.
Mm,
And for so many years, my voice was only received as the supportive one. It was never received as, you know what, y'all, we need to get, like, let's get this together.
right.
So as I started to pursue time on my own, I could hear, behind my back, what you talking about going away by yourself without your husband? What you do? That's my
Why?
dad's
Oh,
voice.
yes.
When I
Without
talk
your husband. Yes, I know that part.
without your
Yeah.
husband, I don't even understand these women these days and all of the things that it was an abomination to get away and be alone. It was an abomination to leave the children with their
Yeah.
dad so that I could have time, unless I was going to a women's conference or
Hmm.
speaking somewhere.
Right. That was a
Hmm.
little different.
Yeah.
Now, even with you stepping away, not just for the conference for women, but you
Hmm.
stepping away from pastoring, how was that? How was that received? And you even wrote, "I was leaving for me."
Yeah.
So, what did that look like? How did that feel?
It felt horrible at first because my mom had gotten very ill. And at the
Okay.
beginning of her illness, my ex-husband and we had started a separate church. So we were all kind of, managing all of the churches all together. So much to that story.
Was it a part of your parents? You know how you have the satellite churches? Okay.
Yes, it was a
Okay.
part of the satellite churches. It didn't start out that way because we wanted to break away. But
Hmm.
then when my mom got ill, we decided to join the churches back together so that we could make sure that we fortify what my parents were doing, make sure my mom was good. So we did that for many years. And for many years it was really tough because their people were extremely combative. They didn't like it at all. So we really suffered a lot of
When you
rejection,
say
a lot.
they didn't like it, they didn't like the fact that you and your spouse at the time was setting up another church?
They
Okay.
didn't like that we were going to come back and help.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we came back to help, it was a big fight. It was pretty messy doing that. And so in all of that, I saw how it took a huge toll on my mom's health. Just
Okay.
the fighting, there was just so much going on. And my mom got extremely ill, miraculously healed.
Mhm.
So I've
Mhm.
seen God move,
Mhm.
but she was still weak. And she thrived on us being together, doing
Okay.
ministry together, doing life together. That was her whole desire. And so as I started to really feel like I can no longer be in this space, my personal values and the values of the church, it were no longer lining up. The church atmosphere for me was toxic. Not so much because of all of that was going on outside of the church office. It was the private things that made it toxic for me. And so
Okay. Let's go there. The private things. What do you mean by the private things?
the private things, what was happening before we came out and got on stage,
Okay. The behind the
the
scenes.
the war between my parents' ways of doing things. My mom was an elaborate, amazing, beautiful woman
Mm.
who did things so big that it shocked church people. Like, church people
Mm.
had never heard of doing fashion shows, in the biggest auditoriums in South Florida. They didn't know anything about those types of things. She did huge tea parties, and there would be just 800 women at a
Mhm.
tea party. Like, it was during that time when those things were just coming about. So a fashion show, you're not supposed to do a fashion show. You're supposed to be preaching the gospel, you know? So watching how my mom was fought to just be the woman that she was, to look the way she looked, it was a fight. And so being in the midst of that, different things that would happen with, you know, here I am, a grown woman with 5 children, probably 4 at that time. 4 girls, that they were my first, my 4 girls, and then my boy came later. Being in that space and trying to make shifts, but being seen as the child, the daughter. Because when you are a pastor's kid,
Right.
which, like, really, no, I'm a pastor's daughter because I'm an adult. But when you are a pastor's kid, people don't allow you to grow up, nor do your parents allow you to grow up in church spaces. So
Right.
you are always looked at as a kid, and your voice is a child's voice. So I remember going in and we're going to do this, we're going to change this with praise and worship. And my dad going behind me and saying, "What did she say? You know, why did she do that? And why y'all ain't, you know?" And so being undermined so many times, putting in so much effort, like literally, we lived our lives in this space because not only was I pastoring, I was also the superintendent of our private school.
Wow.
So we had that. And then we had the other churches, the other satellite churches that we were managing those things as well. And your voice sometimes gets so lost in the midst of other people's voices. And so just watching that, watching sometimes how the people and what the people thought was more interesting or more important than what was right in a lot of cases.
Right.
It was tough, you know? So it was just like, this is unhealthy. It took a long time. I had to start healing, the healing process, to be able to even see we have normalized toxicity here. We've normalized enmeshment here, you
That was
know? Yeah.
That was my next observation. That how did you disentangle yourself from this
Ooh.
enmeshment? Because I can hear you and understand how you would say it was consuming. It hadn't just shaped you, it was consuming your whole life. So how did you begin to disentangle yourself from all of this?
Oh my goodness. It was rough. I started out by just taking lunch with a friend. And that was, of course, a problem. Just going to lunch with a friend was a problem. You know, where are you going? What are you? No, like, why? It's normal to go to lunch with a friend. It's not normal to sit in here and have meetings for 8 hours
No,
and
it's not.
then sit here and eat together. And like, there has to be some outside connection. And so I started to connect with people outside of the space. And when I would go and travel and see my friends, because I had to break out. When I would go travel and see my friends, I'm like, they're not as sick as we are all the time. Like, wait a
When you
minute.
say sick, you mean physical or emotional,
Physical
mental?
illness.
Okay.
I would watch my dad many times on the stage, and you know, it would almost be like he's just getting ready to just keel over, you
Wow.
know, because of attacks, you know, and all of these different things that we would blame it on the devil. But no, we've got people in this space that don't like you. It's bad energy. Of
Mhm.
course, it's going to affect you. But, you know, it would always be because of the call. We're
Yeah.
suffering these horrible things, but we were suffering those horrible ailments because this space is toxic, you know?
Did they ever realize that? Did your parents?
My mom died in that space. So
Okay.
she was right on the verge, right before she passed away, right on the verge of discovering that. And so, you know, even before she passed, there were so many things that her and I got to like really do some therapy together. Like, let's
Good.
talk through these things. And so much came out of her that I was like, Mom, how are you even doing what you did with all of the trauma that you had suffered? You know, my dad is still in that space. I'm still like, Dad, I need you out. Like, I need
Mhm.
you. At this point, he's is such a beautiful man.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I just want you to go to Dubai, go travel, go do something. But it's like that the call
The call.
is
The
just,
call.
he literally lives this life of sacrifice.
You
I
have to.
have to be there for the people. And
Mhm.
so there,
As unto
my
the
mom
Lord.
didn't. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Even as you're speaking and you're talking about the enmeshment and the consuming is how I see it.
Mm-hmm.
I hear or I remember reading you mentioning about the subtle suicide.
Yes.
What was that about? And was it because, you were so consumed with this religious world, was that part of it why you felt like you were, you know, going through this subtle suicide?
Yeah. I, I experienced one of my children actually trying to commit suicide after we left the
Okay.
church. My mom passed away in July 2021. Well, in November 2021, one of my girls was just distraught. My mom was everything for her.
Right.
She was her
Right.
creativity, inspiration, her best friend. And so when my daughter attempted suicide, I learned a lot from that. And when I had to look at what was going on with her, because we always look at someone and go like, what would bring you to the point of taking your life? And I had to, in my own healing, look in the mirror and say, she learned that from you. She learned to silence herself by how much you've silenced yourself, how much you've suppressed yourself, your desires, your needs. My daughters watched me live in a home where I was a married single mom. And my voice was,
Okay. Married single mom.
you've got the mirror, you've got the marriage
Yeah.
papers, but doing everything in the home as if you're single, taking care of babies. At one time, I had my two youngest were breastfeeding at the same time, and changing diapers and going outside and taking the older ones outside, and washing clothes, folding them, cooking, making sure it's clean afterwards. And why isn't things in the living room picked up? Like, literally, that was the atmosphere. And so my daughters for years watched me do what I was conditioned to do, die to self. And so even when I would get angry, I would suppress that and say,
Yeah.
no, I'm going to wash these dishes. I'm going to be a good wife. I literally would be washing dishes, praying in tongues to
Wow.
keep the anger down, because the anger for me meant something's wrong with me. I should want to do this. I'm a virtuous woman, right? So my daughter watched me, all of my girls watched me do that for years. And so I couldn't point finger at my daughter and say, what's wrong with you? No, she watched me die many days.
Mm.
She watched me see her dad sit on video games for hours and me get upset but not say anything and continue on. She saw me doing it. And so when I looked at that, I said, you know what? That was subtle suicide. It's subtle because
It
people
really
don't call it
was.
out like, you're on a destructive path. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So
Mhm.
not only was I doing it in the home, I was also doing it with my parents at the church. And so they literally witnessed their mom committing suicide over and over and over again. And
Mhm.
so why would I be surprised that that was what was going on with her? Yeah.
That's a lot, LaShawn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But let's talk about that healing part. How did you
Yes.
so now you recognize, because that's the biggest thing, us becoming aware of certain things and
Yes.
what's going on.
Yeah.
So you recognize it.
Hmm.
Then what?
As I started recognizing it, I knew that the only reason why I was seeing it was because I was on a healing path. When I decided to heal, everything that I needed to heal started to show up every step of the way. Because at
Mhm.
first, I didn't know what to do, I didn't know what that looked like. All I knew was scripture. You got, and
Right.
you
Yep.
got anxiety. Let's cast that
Yes.
anxiety demon out of you.
Yes.
Let's cast that spirit of depression, spirit
Yes.
of this, spirit. Everything was a
Was a
spirit.
spirit. Yes.
But why is it still here? Like, why am I still dealing with
Mm-hmm.
all of these things? And so, as I started to get healing tools, and again, it was with people outside of my environment, and I learned so many things. I had to face myself in the mirror over and over and over again, and just realize, like, oh my God, we've normalized this.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to pull back on that. My older girls thought I went mad,
Okay.
because now mommy, who cooked 3 or 4 times a day, is now saying, I mean, I was super wife, super mom.
Yes. That cape. Oh gosh.
Oh yes. Oh yes. I was batting for virtuous woman. Proverbs, like, I'm going, if that's what's possible, I'm going for it, right? They thought I was going nuts. They were just like, what is wrong? My oldest daughter, she had the worst problem with it, because of course she grew up with me,
Right.
and now mommy was saying, no, go in there and make your own food. And they were offended. They were just like, ma'am, what is
Mm-hmm.
your problem?
Mm-hmm.
And so many things began transitioning. I wanted my home environment to shift terribly, But as I started to heal, I realized that my home environment was not going to change. So I had to take some drastic, I had to make bold moves. And one by one, every bold move that I made brought another level of liberation. I started to sitting in my bedroom, at home with all the kids, still there with my then spouse. I would get glimpses of a new bathtub and new walls, and I would go, no. As a matter of fact, in the beginning, I started rebuking anything, like, no, because I knew that what I was seeing was going to be separate from my then spouse. And so, I mean, literally having to give up my image, marriage, the way that I did everything, how I looked to my parents, and what, what that was like. It was health or keep up your image, health or keep up the image of a good marriage,
Right.
health or lose your children. Because in that space, I wasn't getting my real kids.
Wow.
It was only when I started to heal that my girls could actually hear my voice.
Mm-hmm.
Because Pastor Mom's voice, it was just, yes, mom, whatever. Yes, amen, mom. But when they started to see mommy heal, my goodness, the
Mm.
relationship shifted,
And
because they could now look up to me.
and you said you started to get your real faith. Is that what I heard? Yes.
Absolutely. Faith
Yes.
faith became healthier for me. Faith for me, it is my heart's ability to imagine more. And so being in that space was clouding my ability to see that there's more to this world than purple carpet and purple chairs and a church, but like,
Right.
please, and so the more I was able to see was the more I was able to move away from that space, tear away from the enmeshment. Of course, I love my mom so much, but my mom's departure from the earth realm helped me to see differently as well. I
I was
was
wondering
able,
that. I'm glad you
yes,
you brought.
yeah, big time. I was able to see for myself. Now, really, of my family, I'm the matriarch. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And
Right.
so I grappled, for a long time with, oh God, my mom is gone. We don't have anybody. No, I'm here. I'm here. She
You
taught me
right.
well,
Right.
and now it's time for me to see for the next generation and help them to develop eyes for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
of course, yeah, again, I love my mom so much, but that also helped me deal with the enmeshment, and break away.
How do you help others who are listening to your story
Hmm.
and realizing, hey, that sounds like what I'm going through, but at the same time they're still in that Christian space
Yeah.
and they're wanting to break free? How do you help them? What do you say to them? Or is it anything that can be said? Because I'm sure it's some people who
Mm-hmm.
you've known outside of your family who
Mm-hmm.
said, you on your way to hell.
Right.
I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
about that. You
You
falling by the
right,
wayside.
you're backslidden. That's
Yes.
it definitely takes people who are already feeling or recognizing that what we have normalized is not okay. And so once they start to see that a lot of times is the first step. It's taking that step in a direction of something's not right here. Because a lot of times we're in Christian spaces that look really good, but the results are narcissists. I'm in a space filled with narcissists, but this is Disneyland. So, it's kind of like they start to seek on their own and say, like, something's not right. Can you help me to see more? And it takes for some baby steps. I took some giant steps because I was
Yes.
like, I got to get out of
Yes,
here or this
LaShawn,
is
you
going
did.
it because
Huge steps.
it was gonna kill me. It
Okay.
was at that place where my physical body was in pain all day,
Okay.
every day, high blood pressure, and my heart doctor said either you're gonna change your level of stress. He said, but I know you're not gonna do that because he was also my parents' heart doctor. I know you're not
Okay.
gonna do that. So something else, and I had to decide. And so for some, it takes baby steps. For some are ready because they're so done with the toxicity. But it's just that steps.
Right.
This has been normalized. Let's shift. Let's heal from this. Let's change this mindset. And in some cases, it's just, rewashing the brainwash, like
Mm-hmm.
let's
Mm-hmm.
let's free ourselves. And so I spend thousands and thousands of hours in therapeutic coaching helping people just walk through, and helping them realize it for themselves, because it's different. And this is why I chose coaching. In pastoring, there is this hierarchy, and God
Yeah.
said you need to do this, but in coaching I get to help them discover in their own hearts, what do you think the next step is for you? Because if I
Mm-hmm.
come up with it, it's not going to work. But if
Mm-hmm.
they start to peer into that blueprint that's already there inside of them, the answers that are already there, they'll make the right choices based upon what's coming up in their own.
Have people come to you about you being selfish in your, because I see where you said the book of me. And
Mm-hmm.
so when the book of me, it's like, especially coming from that Christian mindset, the book of me, well, that's selfishness. You're
Yes.
talking, you already know where I'm going with it,
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, I've definitely gotten that with, like, I'm afraid. Some people have come, into sessions and said, I'm afraid because I feel like I'm being selfish when I do this. So when Paul was writing about Paul and what
Mm-hmm.
he did, was he being selfish? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I
we
do.
look at all of these other people who have written these books of what God has done in their lives and what God has done for people, and we'll put them on the pedestal as saints,
Mm-hmm. Mm. That's
but
what
we
we
won't.
insert certain
Yeah,
religious groups. That's what they call them, the
Saint
saints.
Paul,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So why not go into myself and my own story and start to pull out those spaces where I have met God for myself? There's
Oh.
so many, aside from religion, aside from every biblical scripture there is, because really, when you're going through a crisis, you don't always remember a million scriptures.
Mm-mm.
Sometimes all you got is, oh God.
That's it.
Like when my
Yes.
daughter was going through that, and there were other battles that she and I had to fight through with her physical body, it was a God. It wasn't your word says,
Yeah.
none of that. None of that. It was just,
Mm-hmm.
God, be with us. God, just help us. There are no words in those moments. And so in creating a book of me, you're taking those moments and you are chronicling your life with God. So you can look back and say, you know what, in this space, I was met by God. Religion had nothing to do with that. The church
Mm.
people didn't come over and pray. This was
Right.
me up in the morning, worried and concerned And God met me in that space and made things, go well for me. And so chronicling those things is so powerful. And it's also scriptural. Everything that I do is not biblical, but it does come from scripture, because it is like,
It comes
going
from your
back and feeding on the faithfulness,
right.
that you have experienced in your own life.
And it sounds like in your deconstruction journey, you haven't just tossed out the faith, but
Mhm.
it sounds like an enhancement of what you believe.
Absolutely. Because in deconstruction, and I guess this is why profound self love was so important to me, because when, the way that I feel about myself will affect how I connect with God.
That needs to be repeated.
Yeah.
Yes. No, seriously, because I don't
Yeah.
think people get that part.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Because if I see myself as this unholy, unworthy worm
Yes.
standing before this awesome king, then there are a lot of things that I'll say and a lot of scripture that I will echo, but I won't really be living the authentic me out. I'm always trying to be
Yes.
something other than a worm.
Mm-hmm.
You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying?
I
But
do.
in this space where we've set religion, unhealthy religion aside, and now I'm LaShawn. I'm LaShawn for real. I
Mm-hmm.
can connect with God on a more authentic level. I
Mm.
can hear God because I don't hate my own voice now, so my connection with me enhances my connection with God.
Do you believe that because I come from a point of view that God is within, for so many years in the Christian space, I was taught to look for this external being, this external God.
Hmm.
But the more I have grown and developed and found myself, I
Yes.
realized that God is within. What do you think about that?
I agree with you so much. And this side of life and Christianity, when I hear myself laugh, I hear my mom's voice so
Mm.
clear. It's my mom's voice. When I hear myself crying, I hear my mom. Like, oh my God, this is exactly how my mom does things, because she's in me. And
Yeah.
when we can recognize that who we came from is within, that really matters to your
Yeah.
spiritual life. When I realize, like you said, God is in me, then when I do what I do, when I desire better for my life, I know that's God in me
God in.
desiring better for me.
Mm.
When I
Mm.
am refusing to allow things, that don't look right to bother my children, that's the God in me stepping up and
Wow.
saying, we ain't gonna have this here. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
who we
Yes.
come from is within us, and that I believe is so powerful. It keeps me from, God, if you're there, back in the day, they would do
Right.
in sitcoms, they would say, big man upstairs, if you're listening. No, in
The
me.
big woman in me.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I know our time, we're past time, but to ask one question. If you could leave one piece of advice for someone who feels trapped in that role, that it's no longer serving them, what would you say? They want to escape. They're
Hmm.
in that, especially those who are trapped in this programmed belief.
Hmm.
What would you say to that person?
I would say don't be afraid of exploring. Or if you are afraid, explore afraid. you know
Mm,
and when I say explore, that means relationships outside of that environment. That means therapy. Sometimes it may be therapeutic coaching outside of that environment, books outside of that environment. Sometimes when we are in a space that has been traumatic for us, it's been traumatic conditioning that we've experienced in a space, we want to come out and we go for the books that are completely adverse to it. We want to become
right.
the warriors. No need to become a warrior. Focus on exploring and healing for yourself first. You could become a warrior some other time. Let's let that, you know
You
what I
can
mean?
build up to it.
The ex evangelical warrior, let that emerge later. Because if you do that, then you'll just build another religion that's against religion. Like, it's the same mindset. So healing through exploration is so important as we move forward from toxic church spaces.
What's next for you?
You know what is next for me? I am actually working on like 2 books at one
Okay.
time. So now that Profound Self Love is out, so excited about that. I'm going to be writing 2 more books that have been sitting, you take notes in your phone that have been
Yes,
sitting in
I
my
do.
phone for years. One is called Post Traumatic Church Disorder, and the other
Mm,
one is called, I love this one, Love the Saints, Hate the Systems.
mm, I like
So
that,
just
LaShawn.
helping people to deal with what they've been experiencing, and not so much of, just knocking the church, knocking what's going on. What, yes, we
Right,
know
right.
there are some toxic things, but now we need a pathway out. And so those books are about helping people to get a path out of those spaces.
Thank you so much, LaShawn. It's been great having you. I feel
My
like I didn't have
pleasure.
enough time.